She told him to get fucked.
Wipe me ass.
This podcast contains graphic descriptions that some listeners may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. Now, with that being said, welcome to the Mortal Musings podcast.
Right, let's do this. So, did you see what was in the news this week?
There's many things in the news this week, Neil.
Well, what are your thoughts on citizen's arrest?
Not a fan. I'm, as we've discussed before, a bit wary of vigilante justice.
No. There's vigilante and there's citizen's arrest.
Not a fan.
Not a fan of citizen's arrest.
If you're gonna, force an answer out of me, not a fan.
Well, someone who disagrees with you is a 52-year-old man in Lancashire, in Britain.
Bet he does.
So, he's a farmer, and two little scallywags trespassed on his land.
Mm-hmm.
So he hog-tied them to his quad bike and then rode the quad bike to the police station to hand them in. They was let go and he was arrested for kidnapping. I can't remember what else, but kidnapping was one of them. Now, if this was someone just going in... Well, actually, let me get your thoughts on it first. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so it's a slightly different situation because they were trespassing on his property.
Yeah.
He may have gone a little bit too far.
Like, I've actually got a photo of them hog-tied to the quad bike.
Yeah, you did post it in the group on Facebook, didn't you? Yeah.
Did you?
I assume you saw that on Facebook and then went off and did your own research. And
yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, trespassing, it doesn't, the word doesn't sound as scary, but when you think about it, that's your home, your property. That would scare the shit out of me.
This is what I was going to say. It wasn't as in it was someone's back garden and it was someone climbing over the fence to get the ball back.
It's his home and his
living.
His living, yeah.
Like all his cattle and that.
Yeah.
So, I disagree with it.
His arrest.
Well, in America, he'd have shot him and been okay. Yet, he can't just hog-tie them to his quad bike.
You can't, it's gone insane, lads. You can't even just hog-tie people.
I think I read somewhere it were a 10-minute ride to the police station as well. God. So, it was a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old.
Do you know what? It's PC gone mad.
So he trapped him as well.
What do you mean by trapped them?
However they'd got in, so I don't know if it was a gate, he locked it over. Once they was in,
do you know what kind of?
It over.
Do you know the kind of vibe I'm getting here as you go further into the story? Almost like a Purge or Saw type feeling. Like he invited them in, and it's like, well, you're in now.
See, they're calling it
game.
They're calling it vigilante justice. It's not. It's citizen's arrest. He hog-tied him to the quad bike because he didn't have handcuffs.
I think it's a grey area. I do understand his point of view, but it's crazy that he hog-tied two young lads and rode a quad through the town to the police station.
See, I would have...
Imagine seeing that.
What?
Seeing the quad go by with one young lad on the front and one on the back. Yeah. And your man's like, hey Dave, how's it going?
Strapped down with bungee cords.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, I just saw that and I thought it was very amusing.
I feel like there's a difference of opinion here. I definitely take your point, but I think maybe it's a little bit extreme.
Yeah.
Like, is this agree to disagree or?
No, because like I said, he's not just protecting his family, he's protecting his livestock.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Could you imagine what would have happened if Richard Chase had got in there?
So, what are you... hang on.
What are you subjecting me to today?
And I apologise if I sound bad today. I'm not well.
Oh, diddums.
Yeah. I'll do my best to edit all the sniffles. And
well, the worst thing is, this has been a pattern our whole lives together. If Neil gets sick, like on fucking cue, a week later,
Yeah.
I'll
As
get
I
sick.
start getting better, your symptoms start.
Yeah.
So what we covering today?
Today we are going to talk about the story of Mary Mallon. Sound familiar?
Right, we're nearly 60 episodes in.
She was also known
When has
as...
it ever sounded familiar?
She was also known as Typhoid Mary. Does that sound familiar?
Is that like a wrestler?
Typhoid Mary.
I don't know what you're
No.
laughing at. There used to be one called Earthquake and shit. Earthquake and was that Hurricane? Two big fat blokes.
I've no idea. You keep talking to me about wrestling. I don't know about wrestling. I did watch Total Divas, which was a reality show about some of the female wrestlers, but that was about their lives. I don't know.
Oh.
I'm also kind of interested in the true crime side of it because there's a hell of a lot of shit to do with wrestling.
Well, I'm actually going to be covering one on Neil's Nuggets. So, no. Typhoid Mary I've never heard of.
Did you say typhoon?
Yeah.
Typhoid.
What's that?
Disease.
Oh. Oh, that sounds really bad then.
That's much worse than I thought.
It's not like having a wrestler. That's the same as if you had a wrestler called Leper Luke or something like that.
Leopard Luke.
It's not very nice giving her a nickname after a disease.
No, it's absolutely not.
So it's not like she called herself it.
No.
Oh.
Absolutely fucking not.
Okay.
Mary Mallon was born on the 23rd of September in 1869 to parents John and Catherine Mallon in Cookstown, County Tyrone. In 1884, at the age of 15, Mary left Ireland for a new life in America. She settled in New York City, where she would live with her auntie until she found her feet.
I couldn't do that.
Do what?
New York City.
Well, 1800s as well. Not great.
Well, nowhere was, were it? Everywhere was a
Not really.
shithole. But could you imagine me in New York City? Like, there's nothing I hate more. I say that a lot. But there's nothing I hate more than, you know, when you're stood in a queue at a shop and it's shuffling the feet. Like, just move up a little bit. And then you've got someone right up your fucking ass. You know, they're literally smelling the back of your neck. And it's like, you're not going to get there any quicker.
Around this time, there's a lot more diseases floating about.
Well, yeah, typhoid.
Mary first found employment as a maid. And by 1897, Mary found herself in the more steady and financially beneficial position of a cook for wealthy families.
Oh.
Mary was a skilled cook, and over the years, she had built up quite a good reputation for herself. Now, around this time, there was quite a few outbreaks of typhoid. And if you're unfamiliar with the symptoms of typhoid, you're looking at fever, headaches, diarrhea, all ranging from mild to severe.
That's flu.
And if left untreated, septicemia and death.
So it's like a flu.
I mean, yeah, you're getting a fever.
Yeah. You don't really get shits.
What are you pulling the face at, though? What's your issue?
Because why are they calling it typhoid?
Because it is.
So, I don't get it.
What don't you get?
The symptoms are the same as flu, isn't it?
There's different types of illnesses, though, Neil. Like it's like if someone said, "I've COVID," you wouldn't go, "You've got the flu."
Well, no, I know that. That's more
See, you're
modern.
one of those arseholes back in the day that didn't give a fuck. And now. Now, typhoid is contracted through the ingestion of contaminated food or water. And can you guess who carried the bacteria necessary to transmit typhoid?
Mary.
Old Mary Mallon. So, not great when you're a cook who is dealing with such an affliction. But the thing about Mary...
There's something about Mary.
There is something about Mary, and it's fucking typhoid.
Oh, no, it weren't. The movie weren't about that.
No, not so much. Mary was asymptomatic. It wouldn't be until 1906 that it was discovered that Mary was actually the cause of multiple outbreaks.
Same year as Titanic. Oh, Northern Ireland and all.
In the summer of 1906, the president of Lincoln Bank, Charles Henry Warren, along with his family and staff, were staying in Oyster Bay, Long Island, and at the time, Mary was working for the family.
So, this is just off topic. Why is it everyone whose name is Charles, they have to use the middle name as well?
Well, this was back in the day, and it was like, wealthy people were always acting the bollocks for that, weren't they?
Yeah, they're all, I wouldn't use mine.
And I'm sure he was at least the second or the third.
Yeah, there's that as well. Never gets to like 4 or 5, does it?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I've met anyone that goes up that high. So during the time that Mary was working for them, Charles's youngest daughter became ill and was diagnosed with typhoid fever. Following her diagnosis, 5 people within the house fell ill with the fever. His other daughter, his wife, 2 maids, and their gardener.
What, she like poisoning him by like spitting in the food?
No.
Oh.
The owner of the property that the Warren family were renting for the summer, George Thompson, he wanted this investigated. It would have been hard for him to continue to make money from a property that was linked to an entire family becoming ill with typhoid, especially for the clientele that he was expecting. For example, this property had previously hosted the likes of President Theodore Roosevelt.
Oh, I've heard of him. He were on Assassin's Creed.
And typhoid was considered a disease that affected the poor, those who didn't have access to adequate sanitary practices. Poverty-stricken peasants is how I imagine they would describe them.
That's not very nice.
What?
That's not very nice.
No, it's not, but that's how these people looked at them.
Thing is, saying, like, bringing up the wealth, the only way I can see it is they've got the money to get the medical treatment. But about sanitary products, like, if you're a loppy bastard, you're a loppy bastard. Doesn't matter how much money you've got. Like, I've seen people who are, what? Go into the bathroom and not wash their hands after a piss.
No, but it's not, no one is saying that. The point is that the upper class associated this disease because they didn't have access to the same level of, whether it be clean water or bathroom facilities or what have you. So George Thomas, the owner of the property, he enlisted the help of multiple experts to try and determine the cause of the outbreak. They took samples from the indoor toilet, the outhouse, manure pit, and cesspool. All testing came back negative for typhoid. Food products were also suspected. There was a woman nearby who sold clams, and she was on the radar. But no one else who had bought from her became ill. He also called in a man named George Soper, a sanitary engineer who once said, quote, "I was called an epidemic fighter."
By who? By who, George? Who fucking said that?
He looked through all the previous reports from the doctors, the results of the tests, and also created a list of all the visitors to members of the household, which he would then examine the visitor's medical history. He came to the conclusion that it must have been Mary who caused the illness. In his mind, it was, how else could this affluent, well-put-together family possibly come in contact with such a thing? Again, the poverty-stricken peasants mentality.
Yeah.
By the time they had pieced it together, that, it must have been that Irish scoundrel who had done this to the family.
Yeah.
Mary was already out the door. She had fucked off 3 weeks previous with no notice.
So she knew it was coming.
We'll get into Mary's the backstory of her employment. Don't worry about that. So this is where it was first theorised in America that a seemingly healthy person could be carrying the infection. In Germany, Dr. Robert Koch, the recipient of a Nobel Peace Prize in Medicine in 1905, had previously identified a woman who had seemingly recovered after a bout of typhoid. But the customers of her bakery were still getting sick. They checked the water supply and that was fine, there was no contamination. And her business was kept clean and in good order. So, what's the crack? She was still carrying the infection and passing it on to others through improper hygiene practices, but like Mary, was asymptomatic. Now, before working for the Warren family, Mary had worked in several other households. In 1900, she worked for a family in Mamaroneck, New York, where members of the household fell ill with typhoid, and that was within 2 weeks of her start date.
Wait, so this is years she's been going
Yes.
around giving everyone shit.
Yes. She's got a bit of a backstory. In 1901, while working for another family in Manhattan, they began developing symptoms. After that, Mary moved jobs again, and she had left that job after 7 of the 8 residents became ill. In June of 1904, Mary started work for a wealthy lawyer named Henry Gilsey. This time, though, none of the family were affected, but 4 out of the 7 workers became unwell. This can be explained by the fact that the staff had their own residence. So again, Mary packed up and headed out.
She's doing a bit of a spec.
Yes.
Yeah.
I keep telling stories of this where it's just bopping about all over the
Did
gaff.
she end up in Alaska?
No! Oh my God. That's the one thing missing from this story. Next, she worked for a man by the name of George Kessler in Tuxedo Park. Just 2 weeks into her employment there, the woman who worked as their laundry attendant, she developed symptoms and was hospitalised in St. Joseph's Regional Medical Centre. Now, this raised a few eyebrows because it was the first noted case in a while.
So was typhoid like pandemic, like COVID? Or was it just a general illness? What?
Yes, there was a pandemic, but it's still about today. We just have treatment for it. We have antibiotics and what have you,
Yeah.
you know? So the laundry attendant who became ill.
Just to let you know, I have heard of typhoid before. I always thought it was like a plural for typhoon or something. That is not a joke. I don't know what you're laughing at.
So the woman who worked as their laundry attendant who was hospitalised, she would die shortly afterwards. But she was accused of causing the outbreak. They just weren't able to prove it.
So Mary got away with that one.
So jumping forward to 1906, once Mary was identified as the cause of the outbreaks, George Soper was on the hunt for Mary. He was given a description of her.
She's Irish. She could be fucking anywhere.
A woman of about 40, tall, buxom build, blonde hair, blue eyes, with a firm mouth and jaw.
What do you mean by that?
But this wasn't George, old Georgie boy. He was given this description.
Firm mouth.
Firm mouth and jaw. I like a girl with a strong jaw.
Is that his way of saying no lip?
Oh, I didn't take it as that.
A firm mouth?
No, well, I took it... Well, maybe, yeah. I took it as meaning like strong bone structure. If anything, a compliment. It was also noted that she was, quote, not particularly clean and, quote, difficult to talk to.
What?
I love Mary. I think she's the most stereotypical Irish woman. I think she's brilliant.
So they're calling her a scruffy cow and Martha.
Yes.
Yeah.
George would later write about his efforts to locate Mary. First, I went to the employment agency, where I was given the missing cook's former places of employment and the different people who had furnished her with references. Working from agency to agency, I came in possession of little fragments of her history for 10 years. What do you suppose I found out? That in every household in which she had worked in the last 10 years, there had been outbreaks of typhoid fever. Mind you, there wasn't a single exception. The question that confronted me now was, where is she? Following her trail back to cases in 1904, I found she had worked at the home of Henry Gilsey at Sands Point, Long Island, where 4 of 7 servants suddenly got the disease. Going back still further, I found that 5 weeks after Mary had gone to cook at the summer home of J. Coleman Drayton at Dark Harbour, Maine, in 1902, 7 of the 9 persons in the house contracted typhoid, and so did a trained nurse and a woman who came to the house to work by the day. There had been an outbreak of disease in New York in 1901, and I had reason to believe that Mary was behind this. In 1904, Tuxedo Park, the fashionable summer resort, was stricken, and I discovered she had cooked there in that time. The man is fucking obsessed.
Yeah. What is he planning to do once he finds Mary? Because it's not like lock her up. It's illegal what she's doing. Does she know she has typhoid? And she's just like, fuck it.
No.
Like, she's not getting financial gain from it. She's not getting inheritance.
It's like, this man is fucking obsessed. He's on a mission. I don't know if he's kind of calculated his end goal at this point.
Yeah.
He's just like, I'm going to fucking get you. After all, he was an epidemic fighter.
Oh, yeah. I forgot that bit.
Inspired by the work of Dr. Robert Koch, George was determined to get Mary. Quote, this fucking guy. It's just, hang on. Quote, where is she? Of course, I did not know. For Mary is clever. This fucking guy, I swear to God. Sorry. Quote, where is she? Of course, I did not know. For Mary is clever, and she hardly ever works under the same name at two different places. So elusive.
Yeah.
This fucking guy, I swear to God.
I know I made the joke earlier, about the movie, There's Something About Mary, but I think there's something about Mary.
I just picture this guy with, the cork board and the fucking string. Like, he is obsessed. Although, yes, of course, it is important to stop the spread of typhoid, this felt to me like a bit of a witch hunt. He wanted to be the one to get the notorious, at least in his mind, Mary Mallon.
This is what I mean. Like you just said, witch hunt. Are they going to hang her? What are they planning on doing?
In March of 1907, George finally caught up with Mary. He found her after he was given a description of the cook for a family on Park Avenue that had been affected by typhoid. Their maid, as well as one of their daughters, had fallen ill. The daughter would die as a result of the infection. George would say about his update on Mary's whereabouts, quote, imagine my surprise and my utter joy when I found the famous germ carrier working as a cook in that household. Like, listen here, you little prick. People are dying.
Yeah.
They are sick and dying, and you are just hyper fixated on this woman.
Yeah, I can see it now. He approaches her. He's like, Mary, you're carrying typhoid and you're spreading it around and people are getting ill and people are dying. Do you know what I can see her doing? I noticed this now. What do you want from me?
No, that's not what Mary did.
Oh.
So George arrives at the home, and I'm sure you can understand, Mary was less than pleased to see him. She knew that this guy was like after her.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So she goes out to see him, and she chased him away with a carving fork. Like, Mary's having none of it. Remember they said she was difficult to talk to?
Yeah.
Very difficult to talk to, apparently. But you have to...
Talk to end of that.
You have to remember, from her point of view, he's here trying to accuse her of causing these outbreaks, but to her, she's in good health and she's no symptoms.
Yeah.
And it wasn't common knowledge that a person could be a carrier with no symptoms at this time.
For years.
So it just sounds like a load of bollocks to her, you know? Mary refused to give samples, and any further attempts made to approach Mary were all unsuccessful.
And had the life threatened.
Mary was now being pursued by Dr. Josephine Baker of the New York City Health Department, whose brother and father had died of typhoid when she was still a teenager. So they're all after Mary now.
Yeah.
This would escalate to Mary being forcibly arrested, as she was now considered a public health threat. But Mary didn't go without a fight. She was described as coming out, quote, fighting and swearing, both of which she could do with appalling efficiency and vigour. She sounds like our kind of woman, doesn't she? After her arrest, Mary was detained in Willard Park Hospital, where she was restrained and forced to give samples.
See, what I'm picturing is Silence at Lambs. You know, on the fucking sack car. I call them sack cars.
Yeah.
You know, the thing on two wheels.
Dolly.
Dolly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're picturing Mary being strapped to one of those and wheeled about.
With a mask on, yeah.
Over the course of 4 days, Mary was unable to use the bathroom unsupervised.
Oh, that'd be me fucked. I don't want to shit in front of people.
The samples that had been taken from her determined that Mary was carrying Salmonella typhi in her gallbladder, which excreted through her feces. Now, Mary wasn't a big fan of washing her hands, but no one was back then. It wasn't just that, like, ugh, Mary's gross.
Yeah.
It wasn't common practice. The germ theory of disease also was not widely accepted. And Mary would then transmit this bacteria through the food she prepared for these moneyed bastards. Now, you might think to yourself, but surely cooking the food would kill the bacteria.
Not if it's not cooked properly.
Well, no, Mary, how dare you?
Yeah.
She was a skilled cook and she had a good reputation. But Mary did have a specialty.
Gozzed in it.
No, she wasn't doing anything like that.
Oh.
Mary had a specialty that she would quite often make, and that was homemade ice cream with fresh peaches.
But I think it's the same, innit? Like if you boil something to a certain temperature, it kills bacteria, and I think if you freeze something, if something's so cold.
I thought that, but no. Apparently it's the perfect breeding ground for this bacteria.
Oh. I must have got wrong end at stick again.
Mary was transferred to Riverside Hospital on the North Brother Island, where she would be held for 3 years in quarantine.
Fuck that.
While being held, Mary was forced to give 163 stool samples, 120 of which tested positive. They also offered to remove her gallbladder, which Mary turned down. The problem was, no one really bothered to explain to Mary what it meant for her to be a carrier. It was a relatively new notion to them.
Yeah.
Instead, they chose to treat her as some disease-ridden problem that needed to be isolated. This caused Mary to have a nervous breakdown. In 1909, Mary sued the health department. She wrote to her lawyer about how she was being treated like a guinea pig, how she was expected to give samples but was refused treatment for any other health issues that arose during her time there. She also wrote to her lawyer, quote, "Dr. Park had me illustrated in Chicago. I wonder how Dr. William H. Park would like to be insulted and put in the journal and call him or his wife Typhoid William Park." She is right, though. Like, this kind of almost cutesy name for her. And it's like, that's fucking horrific.
Yeah.
Like, we know her. She's more widely known as Typhoid Mary, you know?
I didn't.
But no, you didn't. But ultimately, her case was dismissed. Now, while in quarantine, George paid Mary a visit.
Did it go down well?
Like a lead balloon. He had a proposition for Mary. He told her that he wanted to write a book about her and give her a part of the royalties. She told him to get fucked.
Wipe me ass.
And she refused to speak with him any further. I think it's important to note that not everyone in the medical profession agreed with Mary's treatment. There were some who argued that all that was needed was for Mary to be properly educated on what it meant to be a carrier and how to treat it.
Yeah.
In 1910, under a new health commissioner, Mary was released on the condition that she never work as a cook again. However, Mary did not follow these conditions. I'm not trying to downplay the severity of this, but for Mary, she knew she would be able to make more money to support herself as a cook than she would as a maid.
Mm.
And again, as far as she was concerned, she was fine. She had no symptoms.
You know when you were saying about explaining to her, like, what it's doing? That's what I think they should do with these non-believers of COVID and stuff like that. You take them to the hospital, to someone who was on the bed, on the breathing apparatus.
Apparatus?
Yeah. And let them see it. Do you not think?
No, because these people are ill and they don't need outside dirty bastards coming in. But, I mean, like, you know, she, as far as she was aware, she didn't have any symptoms.
Yeah.
And none of this was being explained to her anyway. So how can you be like, follow these conditions? And she's still like, you're just targeting me for no reason.
Yeah.
Why the fuck do I need to do this? Now, initially, Mary did work as a laundry attendant once she was released. But she then decided to go by the name of Mary Brown and continue her career as a cook. Obviously, she couldn't use her own name even if she'd wanted to, because at this point, her name was tainted. The name Mary Mallon would always be associated with the stigmatising title of Typhoid Mary. For example, the illustration of Mary that she spoke about to her lawyer. It shows her cooking, and her breath and her hands are basically pouring death in the form of skulls into a pan. Yeah, it was not the most flattering image.
Yeah.
Of course, her time working for the wealthy was now over. Over the next few years, she would go on to work in the kitchens of restaurants and hotels. In 1915, Mary began working as a cook at the Sloan Maternity Hospital in Manhattan.
Fucking I shouldn't laugh, but fuck.
In the space of 3 months, at least 25 people fell ill and 2 would die. It was quickly discovered that it was Mary at the centre of yet another outbreak. Mary was sent back to North Brother Island to quarantine. But this time, Mary was allowed to work in the hospital lab. While there, she washed bottles, took recordings, and prepared equipment for the pathologists.
She didn't cook for him, no?
No. Mary was also given a cottage on the island and allowed to socialise with the other residents and staff. In 1918, she was allowed to leave the island for day trips. But essentially, this was now Mary's life. Mary would spend the next 23 years held on the island. During this time, she was said to have found great comfort in her faith and loyalty to her religion. On Christmas Day in 1932, a man arrived at Mary's cottage to deliver a parcel to her. He found Mary laid on the floor after having suffered a stroke, leaving her paralysed.
I honestly thought you was going to say he was bringing her a book, what George had writ.
That would be
going to wipe her ass on it.
That would be a bit below the belt, wouldn't it? Following her stroke, Mary never fully recovered, and she would spend the next 6 years in Riverside Hospital. On the 11th of November 1938, at the age of 69, Mary died of pneumonia. Her remains were cremated and her ashes were buried at St. Raymond's Cemetery in the Bronx. There were 9 in attendance at her funeral.
Was George one of them?
Fucking hope not. By the time Mary had passed, the New York Health Department had identified over 400 other healthy carriers, although no one else was ever victimised the way Mary was. Mary is thought to have infected 51 people, with the possibility of numbers reaching as high as 122, resulting in the deaths of 3 people. But Mary wasn't the only healthy carrier who passed the infection on to others. There's also the case of Tony Labella. He actually had a higher...
Oh, Typhoid Tony. Yeah.
He actually had a higher transmission rate than Mary and was linked to the death of 5 people. Mary was purely a victim of prejudice. She was an immigrant. She was someone who was deemed lower in social standing. She was also female, which did not help, particularly at that time.
Yeah.
And as well as being an immigrant, she was Irish. The Irish were not treated the most favourably. And that is the case of Mary Mallon, also unfortunately known as Typhoid Mary. The absolute Irish-hating bastards. So what did you think? Opinions on Mary are a bit divided. I personally I lean more to the sympathetic side than I do against her.
Yeah, I think...
I have a lot more compassion for her than I have hatred or...
I think she needed educating.
Yeah.
I think she would have been different if she'd have been educated.
Well, like I mentioned in that, I think it's, it is definitely a point of interest, the fact that not everyone back then, we're not kind of saying that was the norm back then. There were medical professionals who were saying, no, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
You can't do this to that woman. That's, But overall.
Thought it were a bit daft of her going back to cooking. Cooking for a fucking maternity ward.
That was a good one, that, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of felt sorry for her.
Yeah, you do, don't you?
And there's people who all hate on her now.
Yeah, there are some people who think she was like, she was deliberately going against it and, oh, fuck this, I'm going to cook, I don't give a shit. No, she didn't. She wasn't educated. She didn't know.
That's why I asked if she were gozzing him food or not.
No, that was making me laugh because you immediately had the notion of, oh, this evil bastard going around deliberately infecting people. No, she didn't know.
Yeah. Do you know what they could have done?
Getting shit in food.
Do you know what they could have done? Instead, like, stop eating her ice cream.
But it was so good. It was so good. You know, I'm a hooer for the ice cream.
So what have you got for us oddity-wise today?
Do you remember when we talked about locked-in syndrome?
Yes. You can just move your eyes.
Yeah, you're aware of what's going on around you, but your body is just paralysed.
Yeah.
Like I said, bar your eyes, you can blink and shit.
Yeah. Are you shocked, but I can remember that?
I'm pretty happy you can remember that. Because, I mean, I was basing, I'll eat my hat if you don't know who John List is, and you made me look a fool. So there's a man by the name of Martin Pistorius from Johannesburg, South Africa. And at the age of 12, Martin began to lose control over his motor skills. This would lead to Martin falling into a vegetative state for 3 years. Now, he did regain consciousness by the age of 16 and was fully conscious, although paralysed, by age 19. It was his carer who first noticed that Martin was able to communicate through eye movement.
See, I thought when you went into a vegetated state, that's it. I always thought that's you now for life.
Not necessarily.
Oh.
So, like we said, it was his carer who first noticed that he could communicate through eye movements and that he was fully aware of his surroundings, just unable to move.
Yeah.
Quote, "For many years, I was like a ghost. I could hear and see everything, but it was like I wasn't there. I was invisible." Of course, this was not only difficult for Martin, but for his family. It was said that his mother in particular struggled seeing her son like this. Unaware at this time that her son could hear and understand her, she said that he had needed to die.
Oh.
Martin said that, in a way, it broke his heart, but that she was a great mother and it was just that she felt somewhat powerless, that she wasn't able to care for her son how she felt a mother should. So, fair fucks to him. He heard that, you know, but it's still like, I understand where she's coming from.
But, like, she might have thought that's what he wanted as well. You know, like I said to you, if I got into that state, put me down.
Martin said that it was one of the hardest things for him, that he wasn't able to just turn to his mother and say, no, you're doing great. I mean, even what he's going through, he still wanted to be there for her and go, like, look, you know? In later years, Martin did regain control over his head and arms. But overall, Martin spent 12 years of his life unable to move or communicate. In 2009, Martin married his partner Joanna, and the couple now live in the UK. In 2018, Martin and his wife announced that they were expecting a child, and also that he began wheelchair racing.
I'm going to say, did he go back to any, like, so he never went back to driving?
I think he's still, like, he doesn't have the use of his legs, but he's regained, like, upper body mobility.
What was it he drove?
I don't know. What do you want about?
At the beginning, you said he was losing his... God, I got
mobility, motor skills. So, like, picking up a spoon or something, or being able to type.
I thought you meant... Okay.
Quote, "Treat everyone with kindness, dignity, compassion and respect, irrespective of whether you think they understand or not. Never underestimate the power of the mind, the importance of love and faith, and never stop dreaming." Good old Martin, huh? So we talked about locked-in syndrome, and now we've got someone who, you know, can give some details of their experience.
Yeah.
And fair folks to him, wheelchair racing. Huh?
There's the motoring skills.
What do you think of that? Was that a slightly more upbeat one? Like, it was, you know, it's sad, but...
Yeah, like, that's learnt me something, that, because I didn't know that you could come back. What's wrong with you?
Learnt me something. It's learnt me something.
I'm sorry, what did you want me to say?
Taught me something.
Yeah, no, so that's taught me that I thought once you go into the vegetated
You
state...
can make a recovery.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like I said, 12 years of his life, unable to unable to move or communicate. He's since married, had a kid. He's fucking bombing about in the wheelchair doing the races.
Yeah.
Huh? I say he's over in the UK now.
Whereabouts?
I don't know. I don't want to put him on blast like that, you know what I mean? I mean, I think I fucking love this guy. Like he said, you know, the fact that his mother said that could be fucking soul-destroying to hear. And he still had compassion for her.
Yeah. Well, fair fucks to him.
Well, it's interesting to get the perspective of someone in it because you're not always going to get it.
Yeah. No.
Good old Martin. Thank you so much for listening. Find us on Patreon, TikTok, Facebook and Instagram. If you have a case suggestion or maybe even your own story, email us at mortalmusingspodcast@gmail.com.